Welcome, everyone, to Click Moments and Passionate Pursuits The Unfolding, where intuitively guided conversations are followed with feral faith, enthusiasm, and joy, bringing new insights, inspiration, and perspectives along the way. And we're your hosts, Beth Orr.
And Bridget Burns.
And today, we kind of walked into something, or I did this last week, and it's really interesting. And I realized this is something that not only positively impacts my life, but I think will impact yours too. So I've got to share this. I'm going to start with a story. So, do you ever have those times in your life that it's like you're meeting resistance? You're like not wanting to do something. Maybe even you're procrastinating because you're like, oh, not this. I don't want to do this. Absolutely not. I had this the other day with something. I was looking at a to-do list and I was like, to-do list. Like knowing my there's like true colors, like these inventories, and I'm a green, blue, orange, and gold. And gold is like are the people who love check boxes and they love to mark things off. And I literally got the lowest score possible. Like, it's like the pity score. It's like we had to give you something. It's not even like zero, but it's like the equivalent of zero. So I had the lowest number possible for that because I don't care about check boxes. I don't like to do lists. I don't want to do it. And then I thought, well, wait, what if I have all this language with to do lists? And what if I am telling myself because of that score that it's something that I don't like to do? But technically, because I'm doing things now that I love, that there's nothing on this list that I shouldn't love because I'm creating my life. If I'm creating my life, then this is not a to do list that I have to do. This is the I get to list. And I changed it. I actually created a Word document that says I get to list. And something about that, I get excited to open this list. There's like that language and that shift has unlocked something in me. And I'm like, wait, I'm onto something with this. There's something to this. So that's the kind of the setup for this. That's the story. And I want to get into more about what I think about it. But Bridget, when I shared this with you, you kind of were like, yes, let's talk about this. It resonated with you too.
Yeah, it resonated with me because I had an exchange with someone earlier today, and they were someone I know to be positive and spiritually oriented, and someone who I would expect to use language, who is cognizant of the language that they're using. But they sent me something and it really took me off guard because I was like, oh, that doesn't sound like you. And they said something about how unlucky they were. Oh, I'm just unlucky. And I was like, oh, whoa. That doesn't, that the energy behind that doesn't feel like them. But what they're dealing with is like, come on, not again. Like, this is ridiculous. We need a break. So that that was this morning, and we didn't talk about this until you brought this up, and then it reminded me of that exchange I had this morning. And I thought this is the perfect topic for us to bring to our viewers and our listeners, because it's a simple shift that anyone can make that has a massive energetic impact on our experience of our lives.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think you that is perfect for what I was experiencing. So what I realized is when I think of to-do list, there is an energy behind that. There is a string of experiences of to-do lists that I didn't like. I mean, the number of to-do lists, I mean, I've got some years behind me. The number of to-do lists I've had, and if you look at my life, like all of the, not just, to-do lists, but all of the, yeah, all of the sticky notes everywhere, these are like little to-do lists, right? Those are to-do lists, right? At least to organize or do something with them, right? And so for me, it was always a list of things that was growing that I would never get caught up on,
Mm.
that I would try to organize and reorganize. And I always felt it triggered so much shame,
Mm.
anxiety. It dumped all kinds of chemicals, and it like wrecked my nervous system because I was like, I'm one of those people that if I have a list of things in front of me, I can look at that list and I can calculate really quickly how long that's going to take me, and I'm incredibly accurate. And some part of me with the to-do list knew that I was never going to get caught up. That like I couldn't even consciously say it to myself, but my body knew. My mind was like, "Oh, you're gonna be okay. Maybe you can delegate some of it," or, you know, but I some part of my body knew, "Hey, you're never gonna get caught up." So there's this trail of failure, of inadequacy that trails with that to-do list, and what I realized was is that's an old script.
Mhm.
Now I could just tackle it. There's some things that we have that we can't just change the name of it. But this is a to-do list. And I'm like, I can how does I get to list feel? And all of a sudden I was like, oh, that doesn't have any trail. Energetically, it's brand new.
Mm.
So an I get to list, I've never heard of an I get to list. Nobody's ever talked about an I get to list. So literally when I think about an I get to list, I'm like, oh, like I'm buying into that because I know that there are things on this list that I put there that I've chosen to pick up that I know that I can get through it and that there's an end to it, you know? And so there was like, oh, it doesn't stress me out. There's no stress hormone dump. I just look at it with curiosity and I prioritize it and I get really excited about it. Right. And so it feels different. So the experience is different. And all it is a language shift,
Yeah.
but it's a whole body experience that shifts from that too. So that just got me super curious. It feels like a hack to get past barriers.
Oh my
Like,
gosh. Yeah. And it feels like an unfair hack because come on. Like this is so simple.
I know, right? I mean, I'm like, I feel like I'm a fairly intelligent person. And I'm like, why have I never thought about this before? That all I have to do is change the language. And it's not changing what it is, but it is changing what it is. It's like a new neural pathway. It's like I just went, boop, we're closing this one down and we're opening a new one. And now I've got fresh memories. I've got
Mm.
current success. I'm seeing the benefits of it. It doesn't have a trail of failure. It only has boom, boom, boom. You're moving forward. And it's really building momentum in what I'm working on. And I'm like, what are other areas? I love when I have blind spots because I'm like, wait, what are other areas of my life that I'm blocked in that
Mm.
I'm like, ooh, and I'm if I can just get curious on it, are there some ways that I can like bypass and shift how I'm thinking about it, not just from a, oh, you should be fine with a to-do list,
Mm.
right? But instead, changing the language so that I can have a different experience and not feel that same way and activate that other line of whole thing. That's not even true. It wasn't sustainable in the first place. I was never meant to catch up. It wasn't something I had the cards stacked against me. Nobody could have gone through that list. It wasn't like a failure. And so, but I had in my mind, because of that experience, got that all mixed up. So my current project had that lens and that feeling of failure that wasn't even true because of that one simple language,
Mhm.
right? And like I said, you can't do this with everything. It's not like you can maybe shift some of the like for example, if you're in a relationship and you have a friend and sometimes you reach some friction or in a partnership in some way and you've got to address specific incidents. It's not like you can do this with everything, but I'm even starting to think, is that true? Are there ways that we can approach what it is that's right in front of us from a fresh lens that allows for us to like just move that? It's like this. Here's the neural pathway, and it's like we just go like it's right here, and instead we go just like this, and it's brand new. There's like nothing in it. It's like there's nothing in it at all, and it's like oh my gosh, it's just like the slightest little shift, but it's got spaciousness.
Mm.
You can breathe. It's got like it's brand new. It's almost like the project itself. It's totally new,
So
right?
you just something drew on an experience that I had that this reminded me of. So I spent some time as a birth doula. We'll get into all of the random jobs and businesses I've had over the years. One of them is birth doula.
Okay.
But it reminded me of when I was working with clients, I was really mindful of the language I used around birth because we tend to use language that comes from kind of a male dominated sterile medical system
Mm,
to talk about birth. So we'll use words like labor. Well, that sucks. Nobody wants to be in labor for some countless number of hours.
such a
Um,
good example.
but if we talk about the birthing experience, oh my God, yes, I'm birthing new life. That's exciting and expansive and literally life giving. Or I would talk to my clients about the difference between suffering and pain. So we know birth is painful, period. There's no getting around that. And we're not going to sugarcoat it and call it something other than pain. It's painful. But what I would talk about was suffering is pain that doesn't have a purpose,
Mm,
not suffering. You're feeling pain, and the pain is coming from your own body. Your body is
mm,
creating it. So, of course, you can handle it
mm,
because your body is the unit that is generating that painful experience. And the
mm,
experience is that because it signals certain things to us. Like we can learn from that pain. I know where I'm feeling it. I know where I'm not feeling it. It's painful here and it shouldn't necessarily be painful here. There's pressure here. There's so noticing where we're feeling that and working with the body versus against the body in managing that pain is really
mm,
important. So some things we would do is we'd use like a comb across the palm of the hand. And just that little extra nerve stimulus would really block or confuse the brain and bring the mind away from where we're feeling it. But that was a really important place where language could be sacred if we were mindful of the way that we were talking about this miraculous process that we get to be involved in.
that's beautiful. Yeah, that's beautiful. You know what's weird is just earlier, remember how I told you that for some reason, I looked at that A Life Worth Breathing, the book, and
Mhm.
pulled it off the shelf. And while I was sitting down for a meal earlier, I just opened up a random page and it was talking about the birth process.
Huh. Interesting.
And it was talking about how when when the body is in that kind of pain, instead of suffering, that our body is innately capable and knows what to do with this. We actually teach breathing because that is actually something when we're breathing in a certain way, it's actually something that makes the experience more manageable and bearable, right? And so it's just interesting that you're talking about something that I would have not had any contribution to, and but I got nudged intuitively to look at that. But I hear what you're saying, and I actually was looking up while you were talking. Speaking of language, I was looking up in my library, my Audible.
Oh, come
Um,
on. I know what you're going to say because I just wrote it down right here.
no, Cassandra Speaks. So, Cassandra Speaks is a book that if you have not read it, I am telling you, buy it, get it on Audible, order it, do what you have to do. It is a book that you will reference again and again. It is gorgeous. It's by Elizabeth Lesser, who's one of the co-founders of the Omega Institute in New York. She's brilliant. I absolutely love this woman. She has so much to offer. and she's so humble, right? But the book is called Cassandra Speaks, and it's Elizabeth Lesser, and you probably just heard it come on, and I don't mean for it to, but I have to tell you the subtitle. The subtitle, When Women Are the Storytellers, the Human Story Changes.
Mm.
What she's specifically talking about in this book is how we have this opportunity to shift our experience by shifting our language. And men have created a lot of the language for our experience in the world, just like what you described. It's an intimate female experience, but yet men have called it labor, which has unintentionally contributed to, although I will be honest, if they called it something really soft, we probably would have been mad about that. Because we'd been like, you don't know how hard this is, right? So it does actually affirm, but we also get to take back and shift the language on our own. But the point is that this book is amazing at describing this, and I think probably subconsciously I didn't change the language of this intentionally from that information, but I had just given a friend of mine this book to read recently, and gave it as a recommendation. And she's been listening to it, and it's been changing her experience with some things in life. So I think subconsciously that was probably rattling around in there. That language is powerful, right? So what were you going to say when you wrote that down? What was your what did you want to talk about with it?
This is so funny. I love how we operate. I had written down a term that we had spoken about a while back, the idea of a dead end in a street.
Mm,
But then that reminded me that I wanted to talk about the war language that we tend to espouse in work and in life and in positive scenarios. We talk about going to battle or fighting or, dropping bombs, like this language that is really tied up in this war narrative when we're talking about things like reaching our goals, and it doesn't fit, and yet we're
mm,
so conditioned to use that kind of language. And that reminded me of Elizabeth Lesser's book, and
mm.
I think it's a whole chapter or more where she talks about that kind of language.
It's a subtle thing too, right? Like oftentimes it just doesn't fit in something, like now that I've listened to that book a couple of times, there's so many times that I recognize now when I use a word that is loaded with harm or violence or aggression, and it doesn't fit. It doesn't fit, and I stop myself now. Like when I recognize that I'm doing it, I actually am trying to catch myself and actually consciously, I'll even stop myself if I've said it and say, wait, let me search for a different word that actually is a synonym for this that isn't aggressive and violent. It's
Mhm.
almost like it's when we talk about being the change, right? One of the ways that we can be the change in a really simple but empowering way that we I would hope that we could see that it's much more impactful than we know. Every single time we use a word that has an aggressive way, or we interpret something as that way, it's contributing to it, even just a little way that somebody feels something different in that experience. So when we choose our words wisely and we're very thoughtful about how it might affect the other person's neurobiology, then we give them an opportunity not to have to overcome something that we've said, but to instead be able to meet us in a space that doesn't have any unintentional aggression, right? And I want to talk just real quick about an example. I don't wear camo often, like, but I have this one T-shirt that is a camo T-shirt, and I wore it one time, and I heard in my mind I was going to be in a gathering of 10 women, and I knew somebody was going to have a reaction to it because sometimes people think of war. But I was like, hang on a second. We should reclaim this. Do you know the origin of camo? The
Only be-
origin of, huh? I told
only
you,
because
right?
you
Yeah. So to the people out there, do you know the origin of camo? When I was in Scotland, I was on a tour and the driver was telling us about the differences in the tartans that they were wearing. And what I found out was is the different tartans were based on the plants and the landscape, so that when there were wars happening, let's say there was a season where there were red berries and there was green, lush foliage, then you would see like the greens and the reds because it would camouflage them in war. And another clan would have like blue and white, and it was because it was maybe snow and there was like the sky. Whatever it is, the colors were based upon the foliage or the landscape. And so for us in the United States, we don't just have our troops don't just have the browns and the grays and the greens. There's also in certain situations like the whites and the grays, and it's based upon camo because you're camouflaging yourself in war. But if we think about that, we have taken nature. We have taken this beautiful nature. And why do we choose to look at it as something that is aggressive and violent in war? If it's based on nature, why don't why don't we just reclaim that and say, no, 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 these colors, it actually came from nature. It's like the trees and it's the grass and it's the moss and it's the earth. Can we see that in it again and reclaim it and let the war go away from it? Now, this is something that we have the potential to do is to change the rhetoric, the change, the script around it. Do you have an example that you'd like to use as far as like with that, or have any thoughts on that?
No, I just was really curious to hear, like, if you could give another example. We did the to-do list and the I get to list. Like, can you think of another example of a simple switch in language that would be like universally applicable, where someone,
Hmm.
like, so what I was thinking was, I'd love to get that example from you. And what I had thought about was in testing out the language that we're using, especially with ourselves. Something I like to do is to, like, somatically test the word. You
Mm.
know how we can do body testing for like supplements and things, but what if we do body testing for our language? Like, what if
I
we
like that.
do ourselves in a certain way and see how we feel when we like marinate in that language? And then if we
Mhm.
don't quite, it doesn't quite fit, then we try on a new way of speaking about it until it
Mhm.
resonates and it settles in our body in a way that feels comfortable.
Mhm. Yeah, I like that. That makes a lot of sense to me because it helps us also get into our bodies and start to trust our bodies more too. That's something that I think is important. If it doesn't feel right and we say it, if we say a word and it doesn't feel right, but we still say it and we go on, we're still feeling it inside of our body, as
Mhm.
is the person who just listened to it. It's
Yes.
subtle and it's probably displaced from even what it's to, but the word has meaning. And so allowing ourselves to notice when we feel it, pay attention to it, and then really do some work to search for a different term for it allows for us to be kind to ourselves. It's an act of self-love. It's also an act of kindness and compassion to other people, like I said, because it doesn't unintentionally harm people. Some people have an incredibly large amount of scripts around words, whereas to us, it's just theoretical aggression or violence. Um, some people actually have some really strong experience that is something that they have to overcome to stay in their bodies during a conversation, right? Because there's a trail of memories that are flooding their system that they're having to overcome. Yeah. I can't think of another. I was listening to you, so I didn't have anything else. But do you said something? I'd be curious if we can give an example. You said when we're looking at goals.
Mm,
Did you have something that's kind of a term that we can share that's maybe applicable that we could utilize?
good question. So I feel like I hear a lot language surrounding goals being things like striving or battling or hustling. Like all of those terms don't feel good to me. When I think of the way that I want to approach goals, and really the way I think about it is I've rewritten this whole thing. Like I feel as though I'm picturing my like a higher version of myself who has gotten to this place where they've done the things and they've achieved these things and they've shared so much love and they're so full of peace and they kind of turn around and like reach back out to me. It's that I'm looking towards. And if I look towards that, then it doesn't have any of that language wrapped up in it of striving or fighting. What it really has is like almost this like this image of that self like reaching out and embracing and like pulling me in and like wrapping me in.
Yeah. While you were talking, I thought of something. When you were talking about hustling, somebody said that to me the other day. They were talking about, um, I've got different things that I'm working on, and somebody was like, "Oh man," and they mentioned like for themselves that they were really hustling, and it sounded like I was too. And I go, "Oh no," I was like, "That doesn't resonate at all." And so hustle to me, and I don't have the definition, and I don't care to look it up because I don't want to get any closer to it than what I currently am. But to me, the word hustle means that you're like doing some like back alley stuff to get like to wherever you're going, and you're like pulling stuff out of the air, you know? And I'm like, hang on, like to me, when you're picking up multiple things and you're trying different things, you're being creative. You're being curious about, I wonder about this or I wonder about that. I'm never picking up anything that I'm not willing to pick up. I'm always looking for exploring where's the love and way to serve in what I'm doing? And do I like it? Does it feel good in my body? And if I do, then I'm going to keep doing it. And if it seems to serve other people and it resonates with them, then I'm going to keep looking for ways to do this. But I'm never going to just do something to like get by. I'm only going to do stuff that I really love doing, right? And so I was like, interesting. Now maybe people are using that correctly. There may be people that are doing stuff that they don't want to do, and so they're having to do stuff that's kind of like not what they would want to do. But for me, that doesn't resonate at all as a term that somebody who's co-creative and intentionally and consciously um, creating their life, there's no hustling involved in that. That is all creativity. That is all exploring. I think of it like Edison with the light bulb. He wasn't like if he what did he say? He's like, I never failed. I found 10,000 ways to not, not do something. Somebody wouldn't have said to Edison, "Oh man, you're using that wire over there. You're really hustling." Like you're talking to this person over here who may have a part that you might need and you're trading them for it. You're really hustling. You're being creative. You're being excited. You're you're like it's almost like the energy in him was part of creating the energy that he created. That's very different. It's a high vibration experience. And I think that's the difference. Like hustling sounds very low vibration to me.
Yeah. I think of it as like tuning in and intuitively allowing that future to pull us towards it instead of that. And I don't know what one word you would use for that, but it certainly isn't the ones that we've given. Maybe
Well,
attunement or alignment or something to that effect. Or maybe you can think of one.
well, no, I just was thinking, I feel no need to find one word for anything. I didn't do the to-do list was a hyphenated 2 words together, and the I get to list is it's 3 words that's all hyphenated. I'll do phrases to describe things instead of one word. To me, that's part of the joy of creating something new, that we don't have to stick within a structure that exists right now, you know? The other thing I want to say with this, and this is probably one of the last things I feel compelled to say is that if somebody else gives you language for something that you don't identify with, I would really encourage you to to articulate that. It's an opportunity for us to help others see that there is a different way to be able to look at what we're creating. And there's a way for us to look at things from a love lens that is not from this fear-based lens, that is not from this aggression. But if we're going to create a world that is more peaceful, that is kinder, that has a calmer nervous system, then we're a part of that with our everyday language. I mean, I'm even open, we don't get a lot of comments on here, but I'm even open to if we say something in this episode that somebody was like, "Hey, what about this word that you used?" Okay. I'd love to hear that because I want to keep honing and being aware of words that I use that have historically insensitive or aggressive uses in parts of people's experience that I'm unaware of. Like I'm committed to that. So, all right. Well, I feel I'm really interested to see what examples people have, and I'd love for you to put it in the comments to put down anything that you can think of that you're like, hey, I used to use this term, and now I'm using this term instead. Or if there's a term that you have that comes up for you, would love to hear it in the comments. Any last words that you have for this episode?
No, this is perfect timing because I have children who are excited to
Okay,
jump in here and
say
I
hello.
told them maybe in a future episode we'll bring on the children and record
Yeah,
something, which would be really fun. But
that
for
would be fun.
I'm gonna toss it to our outro unless you've got anything else to add.
Perfect.
Okay.
Yeah.
Special thanks to Asheville artist Melissa Moss for our cover art. You can find out more about Melissa at melissamossart.com. And thank you to Cloud Cult for our intro and outro music from their song There's So Much Energy in Us. Find out more about them at cloudcult.com. And to all of our listeners, thank you for being here and for sharing these conversations with us. We wish you peace, love, and light.